Hiya guys, welcome to the podcast. My name is Lewis Rowlands, and today I have a guest on the Rewilders podcast. This is the first guest for our Rewilders podcast, which is really nice. Her name is Frances Goodall. She is a EFT practitioner in Sheffield and the author of a really interesting book on how to heal chronic illness. I'm sure she'll talk a little bit more about her expertise soon. But just a brief introduction to what this is all about. So if you don't know me already, I'm guessing you probably don't, because this is a very new channel that we've got. My name is Lewis Rowlands, and I am a fully certified nutritional balancing practitioner. And I unfortunately suffered with some serious health conditions around 6 years ago. And it actually took me quite a while to recover. I was fatigued for the majority of that time, and I had some pretty intense things like derealization and brain fog, which meant that I struggled a lot to integrate myself into the world. So it took me a while to kind of come out of that shell. And 5 years later, I am very thankful that I am in good physical and mental health. But one thing that's happened to me recently is I am in a new phase, I suppose, of development. And one thing that I'm interested in is kind of reconnecting with my community and with the environment. So I have set up a new, I suppose you could call it movement or project called Rewilders. And Rewilders basically is kind of an organic project which is kind of unfolding as time goes by, with the main aim of trying to help people in Sheffield mainly to seek an audience, to come together as a community. I'm also building it to help other people host events in and around Sheffield, which should be interesting. But also to try and help people to reconnect with their true nature through diet, through movement, through connection to place, etc., etc. But at the same time, a little bit selfishly, I'll be able to learn myself at the same time, which is good because I'm no expert in this really. So without further ado, let's move on to our guest, Frances Goodall. So Frances, if you just want to say hello to everyone, and let's start off by speaking a little bit about who you are and how you've got to the place that you're at now.
Great. So yeah, hi everyone, and hi Lewis. So my name's Frances, and what led me to what I do today is that I also, like Lewis, had a chronic illness in my early 20s. Well, I actually got unwell when I was age 19 at university. I suddenly came down with sort of brain fog and fatigue. I didn't know what was happening. I thought maybe I'd got some sort of strange flu or something, but it never went away. And I ended up not being able to carry on with my university studies, ended up back at home. The brain fog, the fatigue was so bad. And it took me 5 years to make a full recovery. And in that time, I had massive lows. And for the first 2 years, it was mainly a low of just fatigue and being at home and trying to figure out how I was going to maybe get myself better again. From quite early on, I decided I wasn't going to stay like this for the rest of my life. I was too young to be ill, even though I had people telling me when I got the diagnosis of chronic fatigue or ME that I might have it for my life and I might just have to learn to manage it. I was like, no way, I've got to get over this. So I started reading books about healing quite early on and started things like meditation and relaxation quite early on. And then I had another 3 years of extreme ups and downs. I actually had quite a deep experience in meditation that really opened me up, and I had a lot of energy, and then I stopped being able to sleep for a while, and I felt really good all the time. And then I went through another 3 years after that of extreme ups and downs, at times of feeling like I was cured and better, and then other times I was back in bed unable to move for days on end. So it was really extreme, and it took me 3 years to be able to learn how to stabilize my energy, how to not get high when I felt really good and not overdo it and push myself and go back into old patterns of like trying to achieve and get my life together or trying to help other people too much. And having to learn to really have boundaries and still keep up the self-care and everything that I was learning and all that sort of thing. So
interesting. That's
and yeah,
sorry.
carry on.
No, I was just I'm sure you're going to talk about it, but that sounds very similar to my experience as well, whereby the first year or two is just complete mess and absolute fatigue, and then 2 or 3 years after that is a lot of ups and downs, trying to figure out. One thing I learned is that your energy is a little bit like a bank account, and you're £200,000 in debt, and it's easy to kind of get a little bit in the bank account and just burn it all again. But exactly. I suppose you're probably going to go on to talk about how exactly you kind of did it. I'd be interested to hear about that.
Yeah, so for me, it was a whole combination of different things. So it was things like learning to meditate and calm my mind, doing restorative yoga. It was things like changing my diet a lot and nutritional therapy sort of approaches. And maybe not to the same depth or level as kind of the way you work with nutrition, but certainly that felt like it was an important piece. And then it was ultimately the thing that actually helped me finally shift it was to actually go to mind-body sort of therapeutic sessions where I recognized a deep pattern in me of people pleasing and not being able to know how to deal with my emotions, not being able to express my emotions authentically, and that I would shut down and get symptoms. So that recognizing that pattern in me and starting to shift it at quite a core level and just sort of feel feelings that I never really had felt before, like anger, and finding ways to know how to deal with it when I felt angry, felt like absolute key for me to get better and then to be able to sustain my health afterwards. And often then what I found is that when I had symptoms, it wasn't often because I'd pushed myself necessarily or done too much or because I just needed to rest. Often it was because there was something emotional I wasn't dealing with, and that it was like my body's way of sort of alerting me to something being out of balance and that I wasn't dealing with something. So
that's very interesting. So you talked about that you did it's a mind-body exercise. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
It's basically seeing a therapist that works in a mind-body way, that recognizes that the mind and body are intrinsically linked, and that when you're not dealing with emotions or stresses in your life, that it can trigger the nervous system to be in that sort of fight-flight mode, and therefore trigger symptoms as well. So really recognizing those kind of patterns through working with a therapist, but also just reading up more about it, understanding it more, understanding more deeply how connected the mind and body are. It just started to sort of awaken something in me, and realization and a learning that really has stayed with me. And I've been well essentially for 10 years now. I mean, occasionally I get the odd blip and I know then that it's often a sign that I'm blocking something, I'm not dealing with something in my life. So
that's interesting. For the listeners involved, I'm sure that and for me as well, I'm sure it'd be interesting to maybe listen to a couple of examples of that. Because in my work, I would probably come at that a little bit of a different angle. So maybe if you give an example of what you was feeling in the day, and then how that linked back to a unresolved issue or emotion or trauma, and what kind of happens when you deal with that. That'd be interesting to maybe hear a couple of examples.
Yeah. So an example would be that I hadn't realized that I was a bit triggered by something that maybe happened in my relationship. But then like I started to feel lots of fatigue and a bit spaced out, and like I wasn't fully in my body.
So you'd be in a situation.
Yeah.
You'd be in a situation which would trigger an unresolved
exactly
issue.
And then
if it was related to if the issue is related to your relationship, would this trigger come about when you're in that person's presence, or sometimes it would happen elsewhere as well, but it's still related to the relationship?
Yeah, but I think I often wouldn't know that that's what it was until later, like, or maybe like I'd come to say 5 rhythms or something, that's how I've met Lewis, through 5 rhythms dancing. I'd come to something like 5 rhythms and I'd be dancing, and then I'd suddenly start to cry. It'd be like, oh, okay, there is something going on here that's more than just this sort of weird physical symptoms that I'm experiencing. So and then I worked through it, and then my energy would come back and it'd just be like normal again. So yeah, that's a little example really. Or I might be triggered by something else in my life, and maybe there's some sort of work stress, or a client situation brings up something in my own personal history that I have to go and then attend to, and then I'm okay again. I have to get some supervision or support myself around it. So yeah.
Excellent. So I'm assuming that when you say I attended to it, we're talking about some specific technique. I would imagine we're talking about EFT maybe?
Yeah, I mean, EFT is one of the tools that I use, emotional freedom technique. I still use that for myself, and I use it a lot with my clients. I think that's a really helpful tool. And that's basically you're tapping or holding acupuncture points while working with whatever emotion or belief or whatever it is you're working with to bring more wholeness, more peace, more ease. Or there's other tools as well that I use that are drawn from NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, from mindfulness, dance. There's many ways we can become more conscious of what's going on and get some relief and some release in ourselves.
Interesting. I was wondering whether you would be interested in kind of showing our audience maybe how it works. We could maybe do a little bit of tapping or something and talk people through it. And
why not? Why not? I was going to
why not?
Something else, but why not do some EFT?
Well, we can do that, and then maybe we can talk about self-care afterwards.
Yeah, something else as well. That's fine. So EFT stands for emotional freedom technique, and with EFT we're working on acupuncture points that acupuncturists have been working on for thousands of years. So actually, to have a little taste of this, what I'm going to invite you all to do, who are listening today or listening afterwards, after the live podcast, is to just take a moment to close your eyes. And maybe, Lewis, you can do this as well, if you're not too busy with something else. And just notice your breath at the moment. We're going to work with our breath just as an example. And if your breath was the most expansive and relaxed you can imagine that it could possibly be, that would be a 10 out of 10. It's like this deeply relaxed breath. And if it's at all restricted, like maybe you'd feel some tightness in your diaphragm or somewhere else in your chest or in your belly, that's like restricting that full open breath that maybe a newborn baby might have. Newborn baby that's had a good birth experience, a good experience in the womb, and that sort of really natural breath. That full breath. If it was a 10 out of 10, what number would you give it at the moment? So giving it a number if you can.
Probably a 7.
Okay, so yeah, that's pretty good. Because often when I do EFT training, everyone's like 4, 5. I'm like, okay.
Well, I suppose I haven't got a reference point.
No, but no, 7's
so
good. Well,
if I don't know, maybe someone could wave a magic wand and be like, well, this is what your breath should be like. I'd be like, oh my God, it's a 1.
Yeah. Well, also, I know you look after yourself well as well, and maybe you're quite relaxed after all your healing you've done, but that's great. So everyone else who's listening, you can also give yourself a number out of 10. So then what I invite you to do is tap the side of your hand below your little finger on the fleshy bit there. And if for some people with illness, tapping actually is not so comfortable, can feel a bit overstimulating, you can also just hold the point, you can massage it as well. So just to mention that, because some of our listeners might be quite sensitive types. So, and then just saying, even though I feel some restriction in my breath.
So say out loud.
Yeah, say out loud, yeah.
Even though I feel some restriction in my breath.
I accept myself anyway.
I accept myself anyway.
Even though I feel some restriction in my breath.
Even though I feel some restriction in my breath.
I am okay.
I am okay.
Even though I feel some restriction in my breath.
Even though I feel some restriction in my breath.
I invite in a relaxed, easy breath.
I invite in a relaxed, easy breath.
Okay, and then start at the eyebrow, just where the hairs start on one side. It doesn't matter which side. And you're generally using these 2 fingers, but it doesn't matter too much. Quite firm. This restriction in my breath.
This restriction in my breath.
Side of the eye, on the bony bit just next to the eye. This restriction in my breath.
This restriction in my breath.
Under the eye, on the bony bit, this restriction in my breath.
This restriction in my breath.
And if you do this, you might yawn sometimes, or sometimes even tears might come, and whatever comes is welcome. Under the nose, this restriction in my breath.
This restriction in my breath.
And actually yawning is a good way that the nervous system relaxes. So I invite you to yawn anyway, even if you don't feel like Oh, on the chin. This restriction in my breath.
This restriction in my breath. Where are we
So on the
pointing?
chin there. Under the collarbone. This restriction in my breath.
This restriction in my breath.
And then under the arm. And this is about 3 inches down from the armpit. For women, that'd be where your bra strap would usually be. This restriction in my breath.
This restriction in my breath.
And then thumb. This restriction in my breath.
This restriction in my breath.
Side of the thumb near the nail. Next finger. This restriction in my breath.
This restriction in my breath.
Middle finger. This restriction in my breath.
This restriction in my breath.
Ring finger, we go around the other side near the nail at the top as well. This restriction in my breath.
This restriction in my breath.
And then the little finger, this restriction in my breath.
This restriction in my breath.
And then the top of the head, this restriction in my breath.
This restriction in my breath.
Okay, so now what I invite you all to do, and Lewis as well, is to just take a deep breath in and just notice what the number would be out of 10 now. If 10 was the most expansive, deep, relaxed, open breath, where would you put yourself on that scale at the moment?
I definitely feel more relaxed. So it's probably gone up to around an 8 or an 8.5.
Lovely, lovely. So we could, I mean, we could do another round now, or maybe, invite you at home to perhaps to explore doing another round, even if we're not going to lead through one now. And just to let you know that what we're doing here is when we're doing this point, and saying that affirmative statement, I have this issue and I'm okay, it's about kind of helping to hold the issue. It's about having a sense of acceptance of ourselves with ourselves as we are in the moment, because the reality is we can't really change something unless we accept how it is at the moment. So that's the kind of purpose behind this part of the process. And then you're tapping round and you're just reminding yourself of the issue as you tap round. And actually, for the listeners as well, I have got my own YouTube channel just with my name, and we've got quite a lot of EFT tapping guided scripts on there as well that you could tap along with as well.
Oh, that's interesting. So, I'm just trying to fully understand the process.
Yeah.
So when we're tapping, I imagine what we're doing is we're kind of short circuiting the kind of meridian system, so as we're tapping a meridian, is that right, where and saying the affirmation at the same time, is that kind of short wiring the system and is that how it works?
We don't know for sure really how EFT works, but we are so we're tapping on all the meridian points of the body, the whole body, all the different meridians of the body. And, one theory is that by tapping on these points, we're kind of sending a message down that meridian, and we're helping to clear out whatever that meridian might be holding, any blockages, any energetic blockages that are often in EFT thought to be at the root of any kind of emotional or physical issue. There's like a block in the energy system. If we get to that level, often that will help things to shift. Of course, there might be other factors, like there might be, the fact that we need to be well hydrated, or we need to also clear out toxins and other things. But often there's an energetic component, but we don't know for sure how it works. I mean, we might be also just by tapping the body, working on the body, talking through things, we're helping to calm the nervous system, I believe, as well. I think it's been proven it helps to balance the brain and put the brain into an altered brainwave state that supports integration, that supports coming to more wholeness. That helps to calm the amygdala down. If we're working with traumatic memories, we're kind of bringing a resource to ourselves through the tapping and helping to resolve those memories, maybe helping to clear the energy disturbance, perhaps helping to calm the nervous system and release the fight, flight, or freeze response that's still tied up with those memories, release emotions that are tied up with those memories. So
interesting. Yeah. I think in my particular practice, one of the things that we recommend to a lot of people is reflexology. And I know it's not exactly the same as EFT, but it does have its principles based on meridian points.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it's quite obvious that the universe, if you want to look at it on that scale, is actually made of fractals. So everything's just a smaller or a bigger version of itself, and it's the same with the human body. So a lot of people are wondering how this works. If you look into the fractal way that life works, you'll generally find that each point or each kind of limb on the body, various points on that limb will actually relate to other points of the body as well. So reflexology is a big one in what I do. So, by putting pressure on various points of the foot, you're actually kind of massaging a lot of the organs and a lot of the areas
Yeah,
on the body as well. And it allows it to relax and feel calm and detox. So I suppose it's a little bit like that. Touching various points are going to relate to various other areas on the body,
exactly.
which kind of allows that organ or that area of the body to relax and to calm down a little bit. And it kind of makes sense a little bit because as Indigenous people, Indigenous folk would have walked around the majority of the time in either something that's barefoot,
Yeah.
in either barefoot or in something that's maybe leather bound or something of that material. So the body's constantly having a reflexology session, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, and I love
Um,
reflexology as well. And I actually personally, as I was healing, I often would get pains in my feet, and I'd be like massaging those points just intuitively, just feeling like my system was saying there's something that is working on here, and I still get that today sometimes. So it's
yeah, and it's really interesting how when you do reflexology, at the end of the reflexology sessions, I can just feel my whole energy just totally ground itself. And I do think it's integrated into life and the world itself with the fact that we are meant to be barefoot, and there is a lot of issues that people have when they're wearing trainers and when they're not connected to the earth. So it's
definitely,
kind of common sense that by
yeah,
connecting our feet onto the earth, we're just part
yeah,
of this bigger energy system and biology, and it just relates to the whole rewilders concept of getting back into nature and just kind of working with what nature's provided us already in many ways. And it's just common sense just to reconnect and allow the ions to move down, so on and so forth.
definitely. It's actually one of the things
Um,
I mentioned in my book because I found that as I was getting better, I felt that if I connected to the earth, it really helped me, and I would often go out and lie in nature, lie up next to a tree. I would like have my bare feet on the ground a lot, and I didn't even know the science behind it now, but I've since read a bit about the science behind it, and I still do now sometimes, or quite often aim to get outside and have my bare feet on the ground. It just feels so healing and so balancing for me when I have the
yeah,
time
yeah,
for
yeah.
that. So
All right, cool. Well, let's
definitely.
talk a little bit about your book. When did you write?
Okay.
When did you write your book? And let's talk about maybe some of the contents inside it. That sounds interesting.
Yeah, so I wrote it actually only last year, so it came out this year, the start of January. So it's and basically I've been wanting to write a book for years after getting better. I did actually help to co-write a book on 12 recovery stories from ME soon after I got better. So I co-wrote that book,
Mm,
and that had my story in it and other people's stories, which I helped to write up. Um, but yeah, I always wanted to write my own book and my own sense of like what recovery is about and the process to get there and the steps that are often required. So basically, it's an 8-step process for healing chronic illness. And the first step is about how, in order to heal, we need to accept what is for now. We need to be able to almost surrender to what is, because if we're resisting being ill and always in flight about it, stress about it, that then perpetuates the problem. So that more we can accept the symptoms for now, the more we can accept where we're at, that can help us to heal. And in a
mm,
way also I talk a bit about surrender, that we can almost surrender to maybe a higher power or sort of the universe in some way to support us on our healing journey as well. And I think what can
mm,
help us to accept is to start to see, well, maybe these illness has come as a message for me. Maybe ultimately this illness has come as a gift to teach me things about how to live in a healthier way, in a way that's going to make me happier. And I
mm,
know for me and for many people that I know, and probably I'm guessing you the same, that have made a full recovery, they actually can feel grateful for the journey they've been on because they've learned so much from it. And that was certainly my
mm.
experience. So actually, initially, I know it's hard because when people are in the middle of it, it's like, how can I accept that I'm in bed all day, or how can I accept that I've got this pain? It's really hard, and I really empathize with that. But
Mm.
ultimately, you could start to see those symptoms as a message, as a gift, as something you're going to learn and grow through. So that's the first stage, is about acceptance and surrender. I don't know if you've got any reflections on that from your own experience, or yeah.
Um, yeah, to kind of reiterate what you said, it is difficult in the moment, but I can guarantee anyone that goes through it the lessons and the journey and the awareness is just so valuable, and you realize that in actual fact illness is a real positive for your life, you know. But it's very difficult today because there's so many ideas and so many diets and so many this and this and this, that it's difficult to find the path that's actually pretty genuine and truthful. You know, in my own experience, I've had quite a few people come to me that have followed various different paths, and in my opinion, it's made them worse, and they're having to take longer to come back. So it's difficult to find that genuine path. But trying to cultivate self-love, I suppose, in is, if you can, you know, you might have to cancel a coffee with a friend, but maybe you can put some candles on and watch a comedy, and, you know, have some nice tea, just kind of care for yourself. So that's something I would, but
so the next step is about belief and commitment, that not only do we obviously accept, you know, or just like think we have to live with this for life, but if we want to heal, we have to also believe that we can heal, that we have the power within ourselves to heal, and we also have to commit to that process of healing. Like, for instance, I remember when I was healing, I read that there are 3 things that are required to heal, and one is to believe that you can heal, and the other is to believe that you're actually in the process of healing, and to believe in the techniques or tools or whatever it is, or the person or whatever it is you're using to help yourself get better. And those, you know, if those 3 factors are there, then that can have, you know, massive, you know, help you to heal. And the whole thing about the placebo effect, you know, that if we really believe something's going to work for us, it often does, even when it's like it's an inert medication or something, you know. So the power of the belief, the power of the mind, and Bruce Lipton obviously, you know, talks about that quite powerfully, the power of that on our biology, how our belief affects our biology, and important that is.
Have you read about biology of belief?
I don't know if I've read the whole book, but I've looked into it and read bits of it, and I've listened to some of his podcasts and stuff, and yeah.
No, carry on. I'm just seeing if we've got any questions, but
great.
Keep talking.
And then the third step is about self-care and inner resources, that we need to live a life that supports us to heal. So we need to establish good self-care routines, and that might look like meditation every morning. It might look like some restorative yoga or some gentle qigong, or maybe some energy medicine, which is the work of Donna Eden. She has this 5-minute energy routine on YouTube that I highly recommend. It's just some simple practices to help your energy to flow more fully. Like, for example, one of them is just to tap under your eyes, the stomach meridian, to tap these points that we use in EFT as well. Center of the chest, which helps stimulate the immune system, balance the immune system, and under the ribs on the spleen points, which are just here. And there's various ones that help to balance your energy. Another one is to have one hand to one shoulder and cross over your body, and that helps to get your to the opposite hip, and that helps to get your energy to flow. The different self-care that we put into our lives that helps us to heal, and also just building our inner resources. So you mentioned self-compassion here. I also talk about the power of developing self-compassion, the power of following our joy. So even though we might not be able to do all the things that we could do when we were well, you know, what little things can we do? Like, for instance, as I was getting better, I started getting into making cards, like being creative. You know, it was simple, but it was just something that would engage my mind in something other than thinking about the illness, and, you know, just something simple that. So as I said, I think creativity can be good. You know, if you can move a bit, you know, some gentle movement. I actually started doing 5 rhythm dancing when I still had chronic fatigue, and I would use it in a way that I would aim to listen to my body as much as possible. Sometimes I'd spend most of the time lying on the floor and just sort of moving a little bit, you know, but ways that we can bring a little bit of joy and creativity into our lives with where we're at the moment. So talk about that. And then the 4th step is about, well, it's not just our own journey. We are social beings. We often need a community around us. So in this step, I talk about the power of community and support to heal, that we benefit from maybe having a coach, from working with a nutritional balancing practitioner like yourself, or from, you know, from having maybe going to supportive groups, maybe going to a meditation group. You know, I currently run programs for women that are healing chronic illness, where they get to gather online on video conference once a week or once a fortnight, and get to do self-care together, get to have some one-to-one support from me on any personal issues, and really support each other as well. And you know, to feel that they're not alone has been so amazing for these women. And I also run a yearly retreat in the Lake District, And when the women gather together for the retreat, and some of my work is just for women, so the group things I do is just for women, but the one-to-one work I do with men and women. But when women gather together, support each other, the healing that can happen as a result of having that sense of community around you, people who really get what you're going through and where you can be authentic and share your true feelings, is just so powerful. And also when one woman's having some kind of process on working with some aspect of themselves, often other women will benefit from that as well, and will resonate with that as well. So go into that. How can you build more community and support into your life to help you to heal?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really important, so important. A lot of people don't realize that we are social creatures, and it's so easy to isolate yourself when you're healing. And in many ways, it's important to do to isolate yourself a little bit to heal. Because people are so out of balance.
Yeah.
A lot of the time that some people are really, really extremely fatigued. So unfortunately they've got to spend some time in the houses, just resting and stuff. But always be aware of that, of the need for connection. And if you can't get out of the house, try and join a Facebook group. It might not be ideal, but or a talk circle like what you mentioned. But I think it does relate again to the rewilding concept of my kind of what I want to say to the world is that we're not just part of a community, but we're part of a symbiosis with everything and with nature and with the animals and with the plants and stuff. I mean, there's all subtle symbiosis, and there's a subtle community that you can gain from that, and people just are not aware of it. And when you go and spend some time outside and just engage yourself and smell the flowers and feel the air and stuff, you do realize that you're part of a big system. And I think one of the issues today with 21st century is that we kind of get talked into a place of pure individuality. There's nothing wrong with being an individual, but it can get a little bit kind of I'm me and you are you, and there's a barrier there. So it's really important that you've mentioned that, actually.
Yeah, and just love the fact that you brought the connection with nature as well, to have that deeper sense of connection with nature as part of our kind of community in a way, like to be able to connect to the trees and actually get out into the garden if you can, and get out to the woods and really, really connect with nature. I think is so important for healing as well.
Excellent.
And then the fifth step is about overcoming blocks to healing. That there can be certain blocks that can be in the way of healing. So, for instance, I talk about things like personality traits that can get in the way of healing. Like being an overgiver or an overachiever, an overhelper, a peacemaker, sort of certain traits that can perpetuate illness and the stress response. I look at those kind of blocks, and also things like sometimes that the illness can be a way that we perhaps set boundaries, because if we're too unwell to be able to do something for our mother or children or whatever it is, then we can't do it. So we've got a reason to say no. And sometimes people, have almost created the illness as a way of protecting themselves from somebody or a situation in their lives, or from a past trauma as well. So which can be relevant as well in terms of the traits that we develop.
So you think these personality traits generally stem from childhood patterns?
I think so. Yeah, they stem from old childhood patterns. Maybe there was, we only got love when we achieved well at school, so that became our strategy. If we achieve really well, we're going to get the love we want, or we only get love when we're giving or helping others. So so I need to get love. I need to be able to give and help. So I think they do. And for instance, I can say an honest one for me. I was a definite peacemaker at school, and I didn't like conflict at all. But I had someone at school that wanted to sort of toughen me up and decided he was going to bully me, my friend, but he decided he was going to bully me to try and toughen me up. And then one time I was slightly assertive in the wrong place at the wrong time, and I got really badly attacked at a fair in Sheffield, actually. And I think that then made me go, okay, I really just must never express anything at all assertive, that's dangerous. So I think these patterns can develop from childhood experiences, from traumatic experiences, and
and I think kind of the way to get through it a lot of the time is to realize that life isn't about achieving or gaining stuff necessarily. A lot of it's about letting go. letting go of the past, letting go of personality traits, letting go of patterns. And that can be really like overwhelming for a lot of people, because a lot of people have literally spent 20, 30, 40 years kind of working behind and working with this personality pattern that they've built, and it becomes them. They think it's them, and letting go of that is difficult, because there's fear involved, and people think that, you know, they're going to lose a part of themselves or something like that, when in reality you just opening yourself up to the future and allowing your true inner personality to come out. That's something that I had to deal with quite a lot. I mean, I was a big achiever, and I suppose in many ways I still am. But I'm aware of the intensity of my achievement. I wouldn't call it a problem, but it turned into a negative issue. And I remember it was really difficult for me to stop, to let go, and just to realize that it's fine to just not do that. And so yeah, I've got a lot of compassion for people, because I realize it's very, very difficult. I'm just going to mention it now. There is one question, if anyone wants to ask some questions to Francis or to me, if you're interested, then if you type it in the chat section on the YouTube video, then we'll get around to answering them. But
Great.
anyway.
Just to pick up on what you were saying, I mean, I think these sort of personality traits can become part of our identity, and they can feel like almost like the way that we've survived something in the past, perhaps. So they can become like a survival strategy. So yeah, it can take a time to really sort of deeply change these patterns. And also, there's nothing wrong with achieving, and there's nothing wrong with being someone who cares about other people. That's, you know, they're beautiful traits. It's just having them in balance so that they're not making us ill. Like, I mean, I know many people who've had chronic fatigue who have been big achievers and are still big achievers today and are doing amazing things in the world. But they're able to do it from a place of balance. They're able to sort of keep up the self-care and look after themselves to be able to sustain that kind of life. So, and they need to be able to, or sometimes actually people get a dip and they actually get ill again later on, unless they have really learned that enough to sustain it. So
and that's what it is really. Illness is if you can see it as a lesson, it's much easier. I mean, I still have blips now, I'm sure you do. We're not perfect people. Definitely not. We might have overcome a lot, but there's still issues and things to work with, and there's times now where I'll do something, but the world will just smack right back in my face. And instead of me thinking, falling into a victim mentality and, why does it have to me? I wanted to achieve that today, or I wish I could have finished that. It's like, well, it's just teaching me a lesson. And to be humble to the fact that maybe we are just in a giant classroom, and having that humbleness and that childlike mentality a little bit, to realize that, you can't do everything, and there might be a bit of a higher force that's actually guiding you and teaching you various lessons. And when these lessons come up, see it from a different perspective, rather than falling into a victim mentality, which kind of just makes things worse. So I'm sure you totally understand where I'm coming from with that one.
Yeah, it just makes me think of things like, my internet stops working. Oh no, I work online, I can't cope, that's awful. But then I'm like, well, actually, maybe it's an invitation to go and have a walk in the woods today rather than do much work,
Yeah, exactly.
And let go.
That's it. Yeah. I mean, I was stressing out this morning before I saw Francis, because I had a deadline for work, and apparently the printers have received all my work and they're blank. But I don't know what lesson that's teaching me yet.
Still learning that one.
Yeah, I'm open to it. I'm surrendering to it.
Maybe it will come by the time we finish today.
Possibly.
Okay, so I'll just keep going through the steps because we've started them. So the sixth step is about purpose and authenticity. So in this chapter, I talk about the power of developing a purpose to be well. That often it's difficult to maybe keep focused and keep that commitment that I talked about earlier, unless we have some sort of bigger purpose to be well. Like, for instance, I always talk about how my purpose, at one point in my healing journey, I thought, well, if I can get well and somehow spread the message of what's possible in healing, then it will be a really worthwhile journey. It was like I almost couldn't just do it for myself. It was like I have to do something with it once I'm well. And to have that focus really helped me to sort of to make steps to being fully well, and to commit to it and keep with it, even when it felt really hard, and even when the symptoms came back again and I didn't know why, and all of that. So And it doesn't have to be a big purpose, and it doesn't have to be to help other people to get well. I've seen people go off and write books, or write novels, or go off and do all sorts of different things, or just want to have a family, or whatever it is, and that be the focus. But to have some kind of purpose that's bigger than yourself often helps. I don't know if you found that with your journey, Lewis.
Yeah, and I suppose it stems back to the whole community. The whole community thing is, it's like we are social, communal creatures, and it's within ourselves to want to help other people. If we've experienced a certain thing, and I think that's what's beautiful about illness, is it does teach you, or it does show you that in actual fact, you've got this inner desire to want to give back to others when you've overcome a certain thing. But yeah, I mean, that's been a massive part for me. And it's something that I just cannot turn my back on. I have to, it's difficult sometimes being that person on, in front of the cameras, being that person speaking to numerous people every week. There's a lot of responsibility on your shoulders. But it's something that there's something inside me that just drives me to do that every single day, even if sometimes it can get challenging, and whatnot. But I think the whole idea is to be of service, and, not to think that you need to be the lead singer in a band to be of service. There's many other different things. You might be, a great parent, you might be a great, someone who's a cleaner, someone who designs websites. It's just about that the mindset is much more important than what you actually do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just being in that mindset of service is really what's really important. And maybe if you're a more spiritually inclined person, or you're a Christian or a Buddhist, maybe you could even try and channel the higher God or the higher universe and be a helper, and maybe that will guide you into what's going to be the right service for you. Because sometimes, I mean, this is getting a little bit deeper, I suppose, but we'll go there. But sometimes there is an egotistical thing at work. I was talking to you about this last night. And one part of developing that's quite important is to realize that there is an ego that many people have, and it's not necessarily healthy, although it can keep you safe. And sometimes just kind of allowing that ego to dissolve and kind of opening yourself up to something that's maybe a bit of a higher power to you, maybe that will transform and tell you something that you didn't necessarily think that you would want to do as a service, but it's asking you to do it, and it's another lesson in being humble and just being open and stuff like that. But that gets a little bit more deeper. But anyone that's more spiritually oriented, which I would imagine quite a few people are, who's going to be watching this, it's something to kind of realize and to understand.
Yeah, I think it's a Rumi quote that says it's not really necessarily what you do, but it's how much love you do it with. So you can bring love to everything. It doesn't really matter so much what you do.
Yeah. I think there's a Rumi quote for everything, isn't
there? Yeah. I think it's Rumi.
Quite an amazing guy.
Yeah.
But cool. What's the next
step? So part of that step is also about authenticity. So what is our authentic self? What is our authentic self calling us to do? How do we express ourselves authentically in the world? So I think many people who develop illness have lost that sense of their authenticity, and they're expressing themselves authentically in the world. Maybe they were following a path that their parents were guiding them towards, or society was guiding them towards, or and maybe they also were not able to express their feelings authentically and be authentic in the way they show up in the world. So I talk about that as well. And then the next step is about healing the past. And this step is about the fact that often we have unresolved traumatic memories and experiences that can be held in our body, that can be held in our subconscious mind. I mean, I accept that the past is the past, and the present is the present. The present's the most important place to live, looking forward to the future we want. But the reality is, if we really look at it, a lot of us have had experiences as infants, maybe as children, maybe as teenagers, whatever, but we've had experiences that have caused us to shut down and not feel that we can survive in that moment without shutting down our feelings, shutting down our bodies, Perhaps going into the freeze response. They talk about in trauma that when we experience trauma, if we go into the freeze, the shutdown mode, often as human beings, we don't release that from our systems. It gets stuck, it gets stored in our bodies. And a part of us is frozen in that moment in time in the past. And that actually animals in the wild, if they have a traumatic experience, an antelope that's nearly killed by a tiger or whatever, gets to a place of safety, it will just it will shake, its whole body will shake, and then it will just go on as if nothing has happened, and it's fine. But human beings, and actually animals in captivity, often don't go through that natural process that we would do. And maybe this relates back to rewilders. If we were like,
we're now domesticated humans.
Yeah.
It makes me laugh sometimes when I see a little chihuahua and realize that chihuahua actually used to be a wolf. We've bred it down. We're like these little chihuahuas that just so. But sorry, carry on.
Yeah, so it's about healing. Yeah, about the fact that we do need to heal the past. And actually, Lewis, I know you were at the family constellation workshop I helped to hold in Sheffield recently. But also sometimes we're not only holding stuff from our own life experience, we might actually be holding stuff for our ancestors that weren't able to resolve some trauma. And there's now science that shows there can be epigenetic changes in our DNA as a result of these traumas. But almost like those memories are kind of wanting to be resolved through us. So, in my journey, I really feel strongly that part of my healing of what my body's been carrying hasn't been just my own personal history stuff. It's been stuff that's been passed down to me. And I know it gets a bit kind of wacky and wild when you think about this sort of thing, but it does seem to be that we can heal not only stuff for ourselves within our bodies, but we can heal stuff
from generations.
From generations, yeah.
And it's really important because this generational thing's been going on and on and on and on. And, for you to try and stop that you're doing a massive service for so many thousands of people now and in generations to come. So it's really, really good to deal with that.
Yeah, in family constellation work, they often talk about sort of 7 generations back. You're kind of helping to create some shifts. 7 generations forwards. You're creating a shift up and down the line, and yeah. So sometimes that's relevant as well. And then in the final step, I talk about sustaining health and wholeness, and that the value and the importance of keeping up the self-care practices, keeping up the communities that support us, keeping mindful of our tendencies and not letting them get carried away and that sort of thing. So, and following our joy, those sort of things, and the importance of keeping up that everything you've learned, rather than kind of thinking, now I'm better, okay, I'm going to go back to the life I led, and I'm going to go back to being crazy. Okay, oh no, now I'm ill again. It's like, so how can we sustain that? How can we sustain that? Keep working on it. And I think, the journey of life is a constant invitation to keep evolving and growing and, growing ourselves. And that continues the rest of our lives, I think at first I thought there was going to be some point that I'd be like, I'd be sorted enough, I'd have done enough meditation, I'd have done enough, therapy, that I would be just completely fine for the rest of my life. But I just don't think it's like that. It's a continuing journey. So.
No, it's definitely not like that. I've also realised the same thing as well. that you need to see your life a little bit like a flower that's growing, and it grows and grows and grows, and it's a natural human desire, I think, to want more. So, I can totally relate to that. So yeah, that's fantastic. Really, really interesting.
You just mentioned about the flower. So I talk. It's a lotus process. The idea was that a lotus grows from the mud and the dirt and the moist darkness to this like fully blooming flower, that we are on this journey to this fully blooming flower. And
yeah. And I always like to see life and people as a little bit like the Garden of Eden. And maybe when you was born, your seeds were scattered in an area of the garden that was derelict and was not healthy, and you grow as this seed, as this flower, and your minerals are not very good, so you're on a poor diet, you're around other unhealthy flowers, and everything's just a little bit dull and dark, and you're struggling, and because you haven't got any reference point, it's difficult to understand what's good and what's truthful. You just know that deep down there's something that's wrong and there's something that needs to change, and for whatever reason you'll come on to maybe a book or maybe a mentor or a teacher or something like that that says, well, hold on, maybe there's another area of the garden that's not like this, and maybe you'll move that plant that's kind of dying and it's struggling, and you'll go and put that in a new garden, you know, and all of a sudden it's got this richness of the soil, and you know, it's got these other flowers around it that are kind of healthy and vibrant and stuff, and that can be a shock to the system, and you kind of want to be like all these other flowers and stuff, but it takes time to rejuvenate that plant and to love it and to care for it, and you've got to realize who the true nature of the plant is. And you know, maybe this plant's never blossomed ever in its lifetime, so you don't really know the true authenticity of the flower. You don't know its colors, you don't know its beauty, you're just not aware of that. And it takes a lot of compassion and love and confusion to grow and to grow and to grow and to grow. And a little bit like a flower growing, you know, there's this idea of it's in the present. So it's in the present, it's totally accepts where it is, but also there's this paradox whereby it's in the present and it's accepting, but it's also growing at the same time. So there's this interesting paradox, and I think that's how life is. And I think sometimes if we can relate to that, you know, and these flowers that are in this new garden, it can take 5, 6, 10 years to fix, and every flower is an individual, you know, and you might be shouting to the other flowers in the other field, you know, there's a better place over here, but they just can't see it. You know, they can't see it. Do you know what I mean? And it can be frustrating to this flower because you realize that there's actually another garden that you can live in and whatnot.
Lovely metaphor. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, it's nearly been an hour now, so it's been a really good chat. I don't know if there's anything that you wanted to add on to that. I know maybe you wanted to do a self-care exercise to end, or
we could do another little self-care exercise. So
yeah,
this is a little technique that I call a pause. So it's an invitation to take a moment to pause, but also to do a little bit of inner work on ourselves, to bring more awareness, to bring more compassion. So what I want you to do is, so it's using the acronym APAUSE. So for the A, for the first part, APAUSE, just to become aware of some kind of pattern that you might be running. So for our listeners today, it could be, you know, a pattern around being an achiever, or a pattern around being a helper. It could be a pattern around stressing about the symptoms. Or you might just go into your body and notice, where do I feel tight right now? So so maybe just close your eyes and just taking a moment to tune into whatever that is, whatever you're aware of, whatever feeling, body sensation, belief, thought is bothering you. And if you're working with a thought or belief, I also invite you to feel where you feel that in your body. See if you can feel where you feel it in your body. And if you can't, that's okay. But developing that relationship with that body can take time. So bring your awareness to what's there. And then just say out loud, pause, and put one hand on your heart and one hand on your belly, and just say pause.
Pause.
And then take a breath in and out. And smile. And see if you can find a part of you that can be, and laughing's welcome. See if you can find a part of you that can be still, that can be present with whatever is there, that can maybe even see it from outside, see the thoughts, see the feelings, have a bit more perspective on them, bigger perspective on them. Maybe feel your feet and your hands. And then for the A, we're going to do a yawn and a stretch and sigh, or whatever you want to do there. Maybe have a little shake.
Oh, that's good.
And then for the U, what we're going to be doing is finding our most understanding and compassionate selves. And for this, I invite you to find a way to find your most understanding and compassionate self. You might put your hands on your heart, and you might just see if you can feel any sense of spaciousness in your heart. You might again send that smile through your body. So finding your most understanding, compassionate, maybe even your most wise self. Maybe connecting to the earth beneath you. Connecting to something bigger than you. And then from that place, the S is the support. So you're going to support yourself in that first position of where we started, that awareness. And to do this, I just invite you first to just stroke your upper arms and give yourself a hug, and kind of imagining that you're hugging the part of you that was in any kind of anxiety or fear or difficult thoughts or a pattern, like you're supporting that part of you. And also to see if you support that part of you with any words. So you might say, it's all going to be okay, or this is a journey, or I love you, or is there anything coming to you, Lewis, that you want to share, that you'd want to say to that?
Just that I accept myself fully.
Yeah.
And trust in just trust in the future and what's to come, and the present as well.
Yeah, nice, lovely. And then take a moment to embody what you want to experience instead, whether that's a sense of trust, whether that's a sense of self-acceptance, self-love. Take a moment to really deeply embody that. And then envisage or visualize yourself moving forwards, embodying a new state. So around whatever you're working with to start with, maybe just imagine yourself moving forwards in a new way around that. Imagine yourself moving forwards with your day in a new way around where you were. So maybe you imagine yourself just in a much more trusting place about your capacity to heal. Perhaps you imagine yourself just feeling really calm as you go about the rest of your day. So just visualize yourself moving forwards in a new way, and then you can take a moment to visualize yourself moving forwards maybe to 5 years in the future or 2 years in the future, and just really embodying deeply a new state of being, maybe really becoming that full flower, whether that means full of health, whether that means just feeling really happy and at peace. And smiling as you really send that feeling through your whole body. Really filling yourself up with it from the tips of your toes, the crown of your head. Okay, and you can open your eyes when you're ready. So that's a pause practice. Yeah, that I talk about in the book.
Very, very nice. Yeah, that's really nice. I felt something really special there. So thanks a lot, Francis. All right, excellent. So we've got a question. So we'll answer that. So it's just Amy has said sometimes it's overwhelming with all of the options you've mentioned. I think in EFT. What would you start with? EFT question mark. I'll say that again. Sometimes it's overwhelming with all of the options you've mentioned. I'm not sure what that kind of relates to. It says, what would you start with? Question mark. EFT question mark.
Okay. So maybe the question is around the different sort of processes and approaches you can use, or it could be. I'll explore answering it in both ways. So I think it's often an intuitive thing for what you feel most works for you. So, if you feel that EFT, for example, works really well for you, then you would use that, and you would start. I mean, with EFT, you can work with in so many different ways. You could start with just, noticing how you're feeling in the here and now, and work with that just to get a bit more relief on how you're feeling. There's a process in EFT called the personal peace procedure, where we write a list of things from the past that might have affected us. And the bigger ones we would take to work with a practitioner, but the smaller ones we could start to tap through ourselves if we're feeling confident to do so. So maybe a small bullying incident or the way a teacher spoke to you, those kind of things. You could tap through those just to help bring a bit more relief from your past. And then, but maybe you can use the pause process, and I would say, so for example, if it's quite a sort of a pattern that involves sort of quite intense thinking and thoughts, a pause might be more appropriate. If it's a pattern that involves some intense feelings, EFT might be more appropriate, but really they can cross over and they can both do both. But it's really, just kind of knowing that you've got different tools that you can use, different self-care tools that you can use, and just picking out what feels the most appropriate for that moment and trusting yourself. There might also be a pattern of, am I doing this right, or what's the right thing for me to do here? And that in a way can be sort of into a pattern of trying to be a perfectionist with these kind of things. And that can be a part of the illness itself. So maybe it's also about trusting yourself more and knowing that you've got lots of tools and resources you can use, and just picking the one that feels right for that moment. I don't know would you add anything to that, Lewis? Or?
Not at the moment.
Yeah,
I'm just sorry. I was just seeing if we've got any more
yeah,
questions and stuff.
sure, that's fine.
But
Yeah,
yeah, I think that's it.
yeah.
So what we're going to do, we're going to wrap it up there because it's been an hour. Keep the podcasts, you know, to around that time in length. So I just wanted to say massive gratitude to Francis.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming on for the first ever podcast. If you would like to tell people how they can get in touch, and maybe how they can buy your book if they're
Yeah,
interested, that would be good.
yeah. Yeah, so my book is this. So it's You Can Heal Chronic Illness, the Lotus Process, 8 Steps to Health and Happiness. And it's on Amazon, and it's only £5 for print or 99p at the moment for Kindle. So it's very reasonable. So you can buy that on amazon.co.uk and .com. And in terms of getting in touch with me, my website is just my name. So that's francisgoodall.com. I need to update that website and have a PDF about the book is going to be the what you get when you sign up for my newsletter. But at the moment, there's an old book that I wrote called 12 Steps to Wellbeing. So you can get that at the moment if you sign up at francisgoodall.com. I'm also at www.womenswellnesscircle.com, and that's for my work that's specifically with women's groups online and in person. So you might want to join that as well. There's a free 3-day mini course there on an embodied feminine approach to healing. You can get there. So that's how you can find out more about me and be in touch.
All right,
yeah.
Fantastic. All right, guys. Well, thank you very much for watching the first ever podcast on Rewilders. Please, if you would like to listen to more, and if you enjoyed what I was talking about or what we was talking about, please subscribe to our newsletter, which is on rewilders.co. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel, and please add us on the Facebook group. If you type in Rewilders Sheffield, you will see us there. So thanks a lot again, Francis, for joining us today on this podcast. It's been really, really insightful. I would recommend everyone to get Francis's book. It's very, very good. And hopefully we'll get her back on the podcast in the future. So bye for now, and I'll speak to you all soon. Bye. Francis.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.